Hey guys, we currently have new merch designs available, so if you want to check that out on our shop, click the link down below in the description or in the notification above. Also, if you decide to buy one, feel free to send me a picture on Twitter or in my Discord, so check all that out when you have the time. Anyways, moving along. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? My name is Prodigy, and welcome to another video on the channel. The Ultimania series is back, guys. It's finally back. I'm back doing this. We're back taking a deep dive into Nomura's mind when creating some of our favorite Kingdom Hearts games of all time. I am so sorry to everyone for not updating you on this series. For the past like 2 months, I've been saying, okay, we'll be doing this at the end of this month, but I never ended up getting around to it. But now I just had a discussion with myself, and I'm like, all right, just record it, John. And we're back at with the Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep Ultimania. We did one episode beforehand that I will link in the description down below and in the card above. So if you missed that, it was back in October, and I can understand if some of you missed it. Go ahead and refresh yourself on that video, or go to it after this video. It doesn't fully matter that much, but there might be some context in this video that you might miss out on if you don't watch the last video, so I highly recommend it. But we are back with the Ultimania content once again. For those of you that don't know what the Ultimanias are for Kingdom Hearts, they're basically these gigantic, and I mean gigantic, I own some of them myself, books for Kingdom Hearts, guidebooks for Kingdom Hearts that feature interviews with Tetsuya Nomura and other developers for the Kingdom Hearts franchise for that select game. It gives you deep dives into the mindset of these developers while making certain mechanics, making certain story decisions, so on and so forth. And even for people who read them when they came out, features teasers for upcoming projects in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. And even outside the interviews, that's generally a pretty small section of the Ultimania. It's majority a guidebook, but it is exclusive to Japan. But it features a ton of info on the game's mechanics. How does this command work? How does that command work? How are you supposed to use this? What are the damage values, multipliers, yada yada yada. It's a lot. But for this series, we've mostly been covering the Tetsuya Nomura interviews for the Ultimania, and you guys have been eating it up. It's one of the main things that blew me up in general in the Kingdom Hearts community, at least a tiny bit, covering the Kingdom Hearts 3 Ultimania when it came out, and covering the other Ultimanias has been something that has been really fun and has really given me more appreciation for these games, like if I hadn't. But enough rambling and talk. I'm sorry for taking so long to do this, and I really hope you guys enjoy the Birth by Sleep Ultimania, because like I said, still in October, this was one of the Ultimanias that I was looking the most forward to, but Melody of Memory came out, and I moved, and a lot was going on in my life around when I did that, so that's why it took a long time to get from there to here. The concept for the story was there is no coincidence in fate. Did you think about the three main characters having different scenarios from the beginning of development? Yes, we did. When we were first writing out the plot, we had decided on using the three main characters in separate stories. We wrote their stories starting first with Terra, then Ventus, then Aqua. And in the story, you can see that first Terra leaves, then Ventus follows him, and Aqua leaves last. The overall concept is, though it seems like a catchphrase, there is no coincidence in fate. The reason why Riku was chosen to wield the Keyblade, or why Kairi met Sora and Riku, these things that seemed like they were just coincidence were actually meant to be. Had you planned on there being a last episode after the first three scenarios were complete? No, it wasn't in the original scenario that we wrote. The scene at the end where Aqua is walking through the Dark Realm was the original ending to Aqua's scenario. The scene after that with Sora and Riku talking on the beach wasn't there at all. But because that would mean all of their scenarios ended on a dark note, we included the last episode in the scene with Sora and Riku talking. How do you decide on the names for Terra, Ventus, and Aqua? When we were deciding on the names for Sora, Riku, and Kairi in the original Kingdom Hearts, we wanted to have their names reflect three things that made up the world. But with these three, we wanted to make their names out of the larger ideas of Earth, Wind, and Water. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Aqua and Kairi correspond with one another. Okay, so I really find the quote of "there is no coincidence in fate" part very intriguing. because it's something that you can see them still kind of doing to this day. I mean, you could take that plot line and coincide it with Yozora, with Union Cross, with the Master of Masters, and kind of what's going on with them. Things don't just happen when it comes to fate. And Sora in the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 3 even makes a quote himself about fate. Fate seems to be something that they are going to be talking about a lot more in the Kingdom Hearts series, and it was something that Birth by Sleep was made with in mind. Regarding the last episode and him not necessarily having all of it planned out, that's not entirely too surprising. I can understand why he added that Sora and Riku scene in there, because since all of their stories ended on a completely dark note, it was really good to end it with something a little bit more lighthearted, something a little bit more uplifting, I guess you can say. Something that kind of encompasses hope. And that's what Sora and Riku basically were in that scene. They were hope for them. But moving along though, how did you think of Vanitas's name? I wanted to give him a name that meant empty, and so I looked for something that would be appropriate. When I was searching, I found a word that meant emptiness in Latin, Vanitas. It looked a lot like Ventus's name, and in Japanese it has the kanji for Sora in it, so I thought it was perfect. Of course, in Vanitas's case, it doesn't mean Sora, sky, but Kara, empty. And they clarify these two words are written with the same kanji, but are said differently and have different meanings. So it seems like he put a lot of thought into Vanitas's name, and it came out pretty cool. I mean, that's a really cool name, Vanitas. It's kind of intimidating. Master Ericus's name is an anagram of square, right? Yes, but I didn't really think very hard on that name. Actually, I gave him that name while writing the original plot, but when I read through it later, I couldn't remember what it was supposed to mean. I asked around, but no one knew. Finally, the producer realized that it was supposed to be an anagram for square, and I thought, oh yeah. Oh my gosh, that's kind of funny. He gave him that name, forgot that he gave him that name. So basically, Master Ericus's name is Master Ericus for not any huge reason, though he retroactively could easily give it a bigger reason, bigger meaning. I mean, Quadratum, Master Ericus, they could connect with each other if he tried hard enough, but who knows. And moving on with the questions, was it easy to decide on the design for the three main characters? No, it was actually pretty difficult, especially since all three of them would change into armor when I began to work on their design. I had decided that they would hit a round device to change into that armor, but how I could incorporate that device into their clothing was pretty difficult to decide. Also, since one of the secret keywords in the story is Kai, I decided that I had to put that somewhere in the design of their clothes. Okay, I gotta comment on that later, because that just kind of blew my mind. How do you decide on the design for their faces? Well, Terra's look was already a decided thing. We just had to make him look a bit younger. I knew that Ventus should look either like Sora or Roxas, and I wasn't sure which one to go with, but I thought Vanitas looking like Sora would have a bigger impact, so I had Ventus look like Roxas instead, and there is a reason that Vanitas looks like Sora. As Sora filled in Ventus's fractured heart, the fractured part, Vanitas, was affected by Sora and ended up with Sora's face, so if it had been Riku who had filled in Ventus's heart, Vanitas would have looked like Riku. Okay, makes sense. And what about the lone woman of the group? Since she has no base to work with, unlike Terra and Ventus, I drew her as an entirely new character. Since I had made Terra with somewhat Japanese styled clothing, I had that in mind when I designed the belt around her hips and gave her belled sleeves. Alright, so pausing right quick before we move along. We have 3 more questions left and then we'll end off the video, but to comment on what I just read, talking about the clothing part specifically, the reason that blew my mind is because I remember in a pre-Kingdom Hearts 3 like era, and even nowadays sometimes, people bring up the theory about the sigil, the X, being something that is kind of on a lot of Kingdom Hearts characters, especially the Birth by Sleep cast. And people kind of theorize, it's a very loose theory, but people kind of theorize that it's something used to track all of the Kingdom Hearts characters, and it's basically symbolizing that all of the Kingdom Hearts characters are in fact being watched, which we kind of know for a fact because of the Book of Prophecies, but we don't know to what extent. Like, does it go down to the finest of details, or? But still, hearing that they integrated this into their clothing, like specifically on purpose, because I started to think it was just a coincidence, but as we often say when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, there are no coincidences. And that's what Nomura says himself, there are no coincidences. But that is still crazy that that was kind of a hint, I guess you can say, like symbolism for what the story would entail. I think that's really cool. But he kind of confirmed here that that also doesn't mean anything major. That's how I interpret it, at least. He simply just decided to put it on their clothing because it's a key word of the story. And since they're part of this story, it's just something like interesting to put there. I feel like seeing an evil Sora as Vanitas, like there's a decent like distinction there. You're curious as to why he looks like Sora, but you can tell just by the whole aesthetic of this character, they're a different character. But when it came to Ventus and Roxas, people literally thought that was Roxas because honestly speaking, if you didn't hear Ventus talk, if you didn't like look too deep into the trailers, the story, the game hadn't come out yet, you literally thought that was Roxas, and there was minimal reason to think otherwise, really. It's understandable, like they look the same. But moving along to the last 3 questions of this video, it seems Aqua is pretty popular. I had no idea that was going to happen, actually. When I was drawing her, I kept worrying that since she has no connection to existing characters, that no one would care about her. I made Xion from Days a short-lived and pure girl, but I wanted Aqua to be a strong girl. But instead of making her a strong girl who can beat the guys, I wanted to make her feminine and strong. I didn't know how people would take her, but I think it's all thanks to Megumi Toyoguchi. I hope I didn't butcher that. When she did the voice for Pain in Final Fantasy X-2, it was lower than her normal voice, but this time she performed closer to normal voice. I think she was able to express the strength that I wanted Aqua to have. What was your reasoning for choosing Ryotaro Okayu? I'm so sorry. As Terra. Otsuka, who plays Master Xehanort, has a dry sort of voice. The actor for Terranort, Akio Otsuka, has a deep resonating sort of voice. We wanted something that would have elements of both in it and ended up choosing him. Of course, we chose Chikao Otsuka for Xehanort, as he is the real father of Akio Otsuka. That's really interesting, actually. Of course, the reason you chose Miyu Urino for Vanitas' voice is because they have the same face. Of course, except he doesn't sound anything like Sora does he? Urino has kept saying from long before that he wanted to play an evil guy, so he got sort of carried away with it. It's funny because that's the same exact way Haley Joel Osment is with Sora and Vanitas. He definitely got super carried away with Vanitas. Like they both just have way too much fun playing that character. It's very interesting that like the lighthearted good guy can do nothing wrong protag can also have like one of the most menacing voices in the Kingdom Hearts series. But that's going to be about it for today's Ultimania video. Aqua is indeed a very, very popular character. The most popular out of the Birth by Sleep trio, I'd say, and is likely, like, I'd probably say top 3, top 5 most popular Kingdom Hearts characters. She is definitely up there, probably like next to Roxas or right behind him. Aqua is insanely popular. I really do apologize for butchering some Japanese names. I know I had to at least butcher like a couple of them. Like it was really hard. I gotta learn Japanese at some point in my life. But tell me what your guys' favorite part was from this interview. Tell me what your guys' favorite like thing you found out was. What's an interesting fact that made your day while reading this? If you enjoyed today's video though, be sure to leave a like. Share the video with a friend or a family member. If you want to go the extra mile to support the channel, consider becoming a member. Down below in the description, there will be a link for that. And last but not least, if you're not already and want to become a part of the union, all you have to do is hit that red little subscribe button down below. My name is Prodigy, and I will talk to you guys soon. Peace out, you guys. Bye.